Oh boy, I gotta stop getting autistic when I talk about history.
That's the benefit for me. My autism is just purely about vehicles.
I am now officially an Irish king.
So you could call this method of burial doing it dogger style.
Oh God.
I love the absolute heel turn from let's put the Catholics in charge to let's destroy their main city.
How do mommies provide for their children?
All right, let's just say it.
Through the boobies.
Titty.
I love this here because
If you take feudalism and slavery and have them have a demented, twisted baby.
Yeah.
The entire purpose of this was to start with human sacrifice, and now we've gotten to Trump flooding an entire section of America.
Oh, I love this show.
So, because of my black wife,
Oh God.
no, the only discussion that we had at all was literally me opening up my phone and going through the different suggestions that we had from last time. One of which we all thought was hilarious was what cultures had human sacrifice, and if any of them were good cultures.
I mean, this seems like as good as any an intro to the show.
I think so. Can human
right,
sacrifice be good?
Steven, what's your favorite human sacrifice?
Oh gosh, that's so hard to pick. There's so many, and I love all of them.
It doesn't have to be a real kind. It could be a theorized kind, like the Wicker Man.
Okay, I remember seeing that movie when I was a child here, and hold on, correct me if I'm wrong. The Wicker Man human sacrifice is based off a theoretical sacrifice of Celtic peoples that were described by some writers, but
I
was
think it
never
was
actually
Caesar.
witnessed.
If I'm not mistaken, it was Caesar or one of the other Romans who invaded and was like, and in the north, they take a giant statue of a man made out of wicker, and they fill the man with men, and then they burn the man.
Oh.
And then we were like, Burning Man.
See, I for whatever reason, you said the Wicker Man, and I immediately thought of Nick Cage being in the Cage of Bees. For some reason. I don't know why.
Finish your coffee. Finish your coffee, dear. Oh boy. No, yeah, the Wicker Man was a theorized Celtic practice that was described by the Romans but never actually witnessed, nor do we have a single Celtic account of it happening, nor do we have a single shred of archaeological evidence that it happened.
Let's be fair, with the amount of people that got burned alive in various different ways, it's not that much of a stretch.
No, I mean,
Nobody ever actually witnessed Celtic people doing human sacrifice, if I remember correctly.
The only things that we found things. We haven't witnessed it, but we seem to have found things that are somewhat similar. I think on that note.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mr. Nipple Boy.
All right, yeah, okay. Way to introduce things here in the first place. It's all happened in the pre-show before any of this here began, so no one really knows what the hell we're even talking about. There have been bodies that have been found in bogs in, like, Ireland.
Yep.
In which the men were bound, like hands bound together, feet bound together, curled up inside of bogs, which, if you want to quote, like, the tar pits for mammoths, where we found things that have been mummified in it, these mummified bodies that had their nipples removed. Mm-hmm. And no one knows why this is the case. And if you hear anyone online say it's, because of this specific reason, we don't know this. One of the prevailing theories is that a form of supplication in ancient Ireland was in a way that, you have the father of the nation, the mother of the nation, the idea of, how do mommies provide for their children?
Oh God, that's making the pre-roll.
They provide sustenance through bodily functions that mostly only they can produce.
All right,
boobies,
let's just say
yes,
it.
through the boobies.
Titty.
So the idea of this, supplication, is that, again, one of the prevailing theories is that a form of showing your obedience to a king was to suck his nipples.
Yep.
And so
With an absolute freak.
Oh yeah, this definitely started with one dude who was like, you must suck at the royal teat, and then his court was like, what was that?
And so the idea then goes is, okay, well, similar to what the Byzantines and others had the idea of, only a person of whole of body could actually be a ruler. So that's why if someone was disfigured, they weren't allowed to be the emperor, which is why they would go and
Blind them a lot.
blind their rivals and whatnot a lot. then you couldn't be king if you didn't have nipples. So when they were executing someone and getting rid of them, they cut off their nipples. Again, this is a theory. This is not like...
Yeah.
And when I say even a theory, it's more of a possible explanation. We have no actual evidence besides, hey, we found a bunch of bodies that don't have nipples.
Also, it's important to note that these bog bodies, though they are typically found in places like Denmark, Ireland, Britain, in peat bogs, they predate any of the actual cultures we know of back to, like, basically the Beaker peoples. That's about as early as it gets. This is a practice that probably descended from Doggerland and the early Paleo-Europeans. So we're not talking about, like, Caesar got there and...
A good percentage of people aren't going to know what you're talking about when you say Doggerland.
That's a good point.
When the UK was connected by land.
Yeah, so like 10,000 years ago, the oceans were a little more than 10,000 years ago, really. The oceans were a lot lower. And by a lot, I mean that a huge portion of land, or a huge portion of the water between Denmark and Britain and France and Belgium was not water. It was land. It was called Doggerland. So you could call this method of burial doing it Dogger style.
Oh, God.
The point being that there was a large landmass there that is now very much underwater and where there could be a lot of really cool stuff that we just can't really get to. Every once in a while, they will drill down into the land beneath the what is that the North Sea?
Like the channel in the North Sea?
Yeah,
Channel?
and they will sometimes come up with like evidence of human remains. And like in places where the water level goes down, they'll do excavations and they come up with just really cool stuff from ancient Europeans. But this would have been a practice that we're talking about extending back to like 8,000 BC up through 2000 BC before the Indo-Europeans get here. And then it stops for the most part, which is I think very interesting because it tells you like that this is a practice that the Indo-Europeans got here and we're like, what are you doing? Why are you burying this body and where are the nipples?
Probably a lot, considering that was all land and not sea at one point. There's probably a lot of history we're missing because when you think about it.
Well, I mean, this is pre-writing.
It's anthropology at that point.
There would be nothing that we would have any records of to indicate anything
But that's
whatsoever.
the thing, though.
It would also be super weird if there was. Like, if we just found writing down there, that would rewrite everything.
Because, like, that technically would be what England is today because everything that is England now to them would have been the Highlands.
Yeah, it would have been.
So, like, the chances that
the Eternal Scott.
Yeah. You'd think the chances of them having gone up there to make a living, especially considering lower oceans generally correlates with colder temperatures, it was probably a lot colder on mainland England as we know it today.
The glaciers would have still been there. Like
Yeah.
and the whole reason the Highlands look the way they do is specifically because of the glacier movement. It's similar to what happened where it just shears all the soil off of the land itself, and that's what happened.
So considering we do know that there is evidence of human inhabitation down there, I'm just wondering.
Oh, there was definitely human habitation down there.
Like, how much is down there that we don't have access to? That's the real question.
That is a great question about a whole bunch of places, including most of the coastal Mediterranean, because it's not an aggressive drop off in depth for a lot of the Mediterranean Sea. There are probably entire villages that are 100 to 200 feet below the water, all over the place. Because that's the thing is like we know that you had little like nomadic settlements that would move around. We didn't just suddenly start building buildings. We had
fish are an easy access to basically anything, which is what for before farming you would hunt and you'd fish, and it's like being by the water. It's crucial.
And with fish, you didn't have to do a ton of migration as long as your population was small.
Yep.
So there are probably fishing villages that when the last ice age came to an end and the sea levels rose a considerable amount, like 100 meters or so in the course of a few hundred years, or a couple of thousand years, but a lot of it was right within the first 100 years. I think like 25 meters of sea level rise at the outset of Meltwater Pulse 1B, if I remember correctly, which is a lot.
Yeah, it's like 100. It's like a foot a year, right?
Yeah, it's about a foot a year. That's averaged out, of course. But if you're living in a little fishing village on the edge of the Mediterranean Sea, your fishing village does not exist anymore within a few years.
Yeah. Well,
No,
keep in mind-
like literally within 2 or 3 years, like it would have been gone, basically.
and like think about how many people are being impacted by sea level rise now, and that's like a few centimeters a year.
Yeah.
And over the last 10 years, like there are certain villages across the world that like have had to reseed just from that minute change by comparison to what this was.
All right,
Yeah.
solution to stop global warming in here. We put the Dutch in charge.
What are the Dutch going to do?
They're going to build levees everywhere, and they're going to reclaim land from the ocean.
They're going to levy the ocean itself. They're going to raise the sea level in the center of the ocean to lower it everywhere else.
What
Yeah.
if we just built like a really big pit in somewhere in Africa, and then we just like put a bunch of water in it?
That is quite literally one of the ideas that people already have for greening the Sahara Desert. Have you not seen like one of those plans of what they have? Now it's
The only thing I
theoretical, mind you.
recall of this is from The Man in the High Castle.
Okay, so so it's a similar kind of vein of thought, but not nearly to the same degree.
Well, I would hope not.
So here's the premise, and this is theoretically something that very well could work out. There is a depression in the middle of the Sahara Desert, not in the middle.
I sure
here.
bet there is.
There's a lot of depression in the first place if you're around the Sahara, but there is a depression that is off of. It's in between like Libya and Egypt, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
And it's not too far, only like I think it was a couple dozen kilometers from the ocean itself, where there's just again a large depression that if you dug a canal going to it, it would drain the Mediterranean into this, which, yeah, obviously salt water is not going to be able to be used for farming or anything, but
Would
what that
eventually
would-
desalinate to
what
an
that will
extent.
do, yeah, well, the whole point of it is that
Going through all
by
that sand.
what that does is the edge of the sea.
Sand would filter it to an extent. Really?
No, that's not what happens. It's rain. The rain is what the big deal is, because if you've noticed around the edges of the Mediterranean,
Oh.
it's even in places that are desert. Like Libya is 90-something% desert, but the edge right around the Mediterranean is green, which is one of the reasons why, when Italy was going and taking things over there, Libya was seen as just, it's just Italy, but slightly warmer in a different environment, because it was right there on the ocean.
Right.
So if you go and you dig this channel and then you bring a large body of water into the desert, the heat of the desert is going to cause rapid evaporation, which is going to allow them to mine salt from it, which in turn is going to be an export. But more importantly, it will actually change the weather in that location, because it will increase the amount of moisture in the air, which will cause rainfall, which will allow you to reclaim entire sections of the desert and make it green.
We need to put the Catholics in charge of this,
Why?
so they can bless the rains, Aiden.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Down in Africa.
God, man.
Incredible.
Keep up.
Oh my God! All right, here,
Can you
hold on.
imagine making Egypt green?
I'm gonna bring up this.
Where
up.
is the depression? Like where specifically?
Here, hold on.
All
So
right, here, brother.
plan to
Yeah, because that would be really cool. Also, yeah, no, because salt is like fully. It's not like suspended in the water; it's diluted in the water.
Gotcha.
So yeah, filtration doesn't really work like that.
I will remind you that I did not do well in high school chemistry.
That's fair.
I did get a 93 on the final, and that upset my teacher deeply
Incredible.
because I had a C all year.
Yeah, you did well in history and English.
Yeah.
I did well in science and English, not math. Science.
Yeah, no, that's the funniest part. On my ACT, my highest score was science. I got a 35. I got a 27 on math.
Yep. Yeah, the only reason I got a 29 on math is because we did tutoring.
That's
for
it.
that.
The Qatara Depression project. That's what it is. The concept calls for excavating. For the Aswan Heights. So that's where it's located here. So you see like the delta of the Nile and everything. It's just beyond that.
Oh, they just want to build.
Oh, so it's not very far in then.
It's not very far in. It would basically be a giant lake that would be done, because this is already a large depression. So the Qatara Depression is a region that lies 60 meters below sea level on average and is currently a vast uninhabited desert, because that's all it is. Water could be let into the area by connecting it to the Mediterranean Sea with tunnels or canals, and the inflowing water would then evaporate quickly because of the desert climate. So
I feel like we have a lot of solutions to climate change that don't involve me changing my lifestyle.
We do. It's just it costs so much money that no one's willing to fund it.
Because theoretically, in here, you could keep it as an almost constant thing because it does two things. One, by building a canal and the constant flow of water, you build a hydroelectric
Creates
dam.
jobs.
So hydroelectric dam that would be on it would allow you to generate electricity. And then simultaneously, it would be a constant ability to harvest salt and other materials from it as things evaporate. And so by balancing the inflow and evaporation, the lake's water level could be maintained constant. Several proposed lake levels are 70, 60, and 50 meters below sea level. And yeah, this is a thing that was proposed all the way back in 1927, which is where a lot of those major projects to change the world came from, most of which were stupid. This one actually has a premise that seems realistic in comparison to the idea of draining the entire Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah.
Why would you want to drain the entire Mediterranean Sea? What would that achieve?
For more land, so that people stop fighting over it. It's over the same idea that was like a
Yeah,
super version.
we'll still fight over it.
Yeah, of course they will, because it's humanity.
Like, I'll fight over it. I have no stake in this. I just want to fight somebody.
People forget just how much of humanity actually has that mindset.
Yeah.
Like, you forget. No.
I routinely go out and I'm like, man, I have not been in a bar fight in a long time.
no.
I should do that sometime soon.
I think, you know what's really entertaining?
Considering the
to me?
bars around here, I'm disappointed in you, Aiden.
Right?
Well, ever since PJ's closed, there's nowhere to get into a fight.
I know. Well, it's because people escalated the fights a little too far there.
Yeah, man. I liked being a bouncer because then I could get in the fights.
There you go. That's the thing. But people forget there are several, like, 17 to 19-year-old, like, young men who really...
Several of them?
Who really just want to fight.
Just a few.
And they forget that they just are the people who enlist in the Marines. And they forget that there is a significant portion of the population that just wants to go to war.
Yeah.
The whole thing of, like, young men wanting to die in a European conflict at 26 isn't just a meme.
No, I would rather bleed out in the snow than go peacefully in my bed.
Yeah.
Ferda.
Speaking of things not ending peacefully in here, I was doing just a little bit more digging into this. There have been multiple proposals for this exact one of which came from the CIA.
Of course it did.
Which, of course, it did, right? There was a 1957 proposal by the CIA that was proposed to President Dwight Eisenhower that peace in the Middle East, quite a tall order, could be achieved by flooding the Qatara Depression. The resulting lagoon, according to the CIA, would have 4 benefits. It would be spectacular and peaceful. One, I'm not even kidding. That's actually what it says here.
They're going in. They're like, Dwight, listen.
It would be spectacular.
And peaceful. Dwight, listen to me. It's gonna be spectacular. It's gonna be beautiful. A beautiful lagoon.
Which I'm only assuming they're like, yes, peaceful infrastructure project. No one would be mad about this. It would be totally peaceful. Absolutely.
That's 100% the way they plan to market it.
Yeah.
It was like, hey guys, it'll be a tourist attraction.
I want a cost estimate on this.
Mm-hmm. So 1 would be spectacular and peaceful. 2, it would materially after the climate it would alter the climate in adjacent areas. So that would be nice. 3, it would provide work during construction and living areas after completion, of course. And 4, this is part of the funny part here, it would get Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser's mind on other matters because he needed to get off the Soviet hook. Basically, just like, hey, what if we gave them this giant infrastructure project, and not only does it help them, but it looks pretty and it stops them from f***ing around with the Soviets.
This guy was a toddler.
This is not my
It's the
period of
CIA.
history. This is not my period of history. What did we do instead?
It didn't happen. Like, it didn't get proposed at all. Nothing really. So here's the thing: there had been in communication with Egypt, because remember, this is right around the time. This is 1957. 10 years later is where you have
USS Liberty incident happens.
Well, you got the 1967 war with Israel, and that means that Egypt at that point was a entity that was arguably one of the most powerful states in the Middle East. And everyone was trying to get influence over them.
I feel like we should have done this. I feel a lot of the problems we have today would be solved if we had done this.
God dang. You know, this could have been done with, I don't remember the exact name of the operation, but if only that the whole nuclear infrastructure projects had actually worked, and we just used nukes to blow up the desert.
Yeah. We could do a test run in Death Valley.
What if we turn the Holy See into the Holy Sea?
What?
SEE to SEA.
So yes. So what is SEE?
Oh, it's where the Vatican is.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Make it a lake.
Imagine the unlimited
It would be
holy
a-
water
exactly.
supply.
I'm sorry. No.
Unlimited holy water.
I love the absolute heel turn from let's put the Catholics in charge to let's destroy their main city.
It's
Definition of history unhinged, everybody.
listen. I am a Protestant. This does serve me. This is self-serving.
No one hates Christians more than other Christians.
I would love to go paddling around the Vatican.
little.
They can keep the build. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't flood the building. The building's
Just
tall.
turn the Vatican into Venice.
I was literally thinking
Just
that.
turn the Vatican into
Yeah,
Venice.
exactly.
Instead of a little like Toyota van, the Pope gets pulled around
no,
on
so-
like a
so-
little barge.
So hear me out. Hear me out. As far as I understand it with holy water, it's a one drop rule kind of thing. So we turn the Vatican into a moat, and then we connect it to the
wait.
Mediterranean, and then the entire Mediterranean becomes Catholic.
Wait. What do you mean it's a one drop rule?
Like you'd put one drop of holy water into regular water, and it becomes holy water.
So if I squeezed a bottle of holy water into the ocean, would that make the entire ocean holy water?
I think you may have just caused another synod to occur. Yes,
Another what?
synod,
Which is?
Catholic Council,
Ah.
Ecumenical Council.
Because I guarantee someone has done that before, which means that everybody's been swimming in holy water.
Oh, there's got to be some saint back there who like blessed the ocean and made it holy.
I think there was some limitation of rule that it didn't actually happen in salt water. Like it had to be fresh water.
Salt water is the devil's water. I see.
Because I think it has to be able to sustain. I don't remember. I'm speaking out my ass here.
Me
when I
too.
say this.
Somebody bless the Great Lakes, and maybe the Edmund Fitzgerald will rise again.
Okay, after 30 years.
I like how we started with human sacrifice and it's ended with let's drown the Vatican.
No, let's raise the Edmund Fitzgerald. You raise me up
Oh God, man.
so I can deliver iron ore.
If we were where would we put if we were to do this in the United States? Where would we put the lake?
Where would we
Death
put the
Valley.
lake? Oh yeah, no, easily. Something.
Death
It
Valley?
would have to be California. It would. I mean, you got to think the entire region of the desert here in the first place would be fitting. Wait, no, hold on. We're thinking about this unrealistically.
We flood
because
the valley again.
It depends. It depends on how high of elevation
valley?
any of this stuff is. The only reason that the depression works in Egypt is because it is an actual depression that is below sea level.
Yeah, Death
Death
Valley,
Valley
I
is
think
sure below sea level.
Yeah, hang on. What is the valley in California that used to be a lake?
There's a whole bunch of valleys in the west.
No,
that used to be
no,
lakes.
That was one of the ones that got drained for agricultural purposes, wasn't it?
Yep.
And then it turned
Yep,
the whole
yep.
thing into a giant
No,
desert.
that whole, basically all of California. You can see it between the mountains in the east and west.
Entire like Joaquin Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's considered that or the Sacramento. Yeah, but it's basically the entire state.
Is it in?
Wait. You're telling me that we can fix sea level rise to an extent and also get rid of California?
Correct.
I'm in. I'm in.
Yeah, that whole thing used to be a lake.
There's so many clips of this that
It
would
will
be
clean,
for like the
listen,
beginning
the streets of San Francisco will be cleaner than they have been in years.
Oh god, I can't
Oh,
even
no.
fault you. That's genuinely realistic.
Yeah, Also, they said there's some Bigfoots out there. No more problems with that.
Man, imagine Bigfoot, but it's big flippers.
Feet. Yeah, it goes all the way from Bakersfield to Redding.
I don't know where any of those places are.
Bakersfield is just north of Los Angeles, and Redding is just south of Oregon. It is almost the entirety
Can
of
we
the
build a
state.
levee that keeps it out of Northern California? They're okay.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, cool. Everything south of Sacramento must go.
What's the random mountain in the middle of...
Let me see.
It's just like a...
So I'm looking this up right now. Deserts in USA in terms of elevation, the
That
majority
definitely
of
looks
it
like
is
that looks like a caldera, not a caldera. That looks like a volcano.
Yeah, it had to be, right?
Sutter Buttes.
the majority of it is straight up along the lines of 3,000 to 6,000 feet above sea level, which you're not going to be able to get the ocean into that here.
No, you'd have to pump it up. Pump up the jam. Pump it.
And a lot of that is because it's quite literally mountainous desert, like the great. Oh yeah, great. But you're not going to be able to do that here.
Well, we could get it into Death Valley.
Yeah.
We could dig a canal to Death Valley. That would work.
Yeah, no, if you're going to do the whole, like, California Valley, it would have to be, like, Great idea. We motivate California to make more nuclear energy.
So no,
and then
no.
we
Here's what we do.
build them in a line. So we pump the water from the ocean to then go over hard water coolant infrastructure with the salt water. So that way they never come into contact with each other. It's just cooling it. And then it travels to the next one, cools as it travels, and then cools the next reactor. So that way it's actually being productive until it gets to the point of the valley.
Better idea. We melt Antarctica, raise the sea level, and then drain it into California.
Unfortunately, I just looked at the words depression in American desert, and the
Dust bowl.
Yeah, can you guess? Yeah, that's all that came up is like, yes, the Great Depression. It's just people. It's just people being depressed.
No, you know what? I can
helpful in that.
I can get behind flooding Death Valley. I can get behind that.
We could also flood the Great Salt Lake again because it's shrinking anyway.
That's true. It also looks gross on Google Maps.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember there's a that is one of the things I need to actually go in and cover more, because the varying Salt Lakes or the Salt Lake, when you look at the different regions, it's shrunk by 30% in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
It's extensive.
Well, you know what? We keep sending all of the water from the Mississippi down to Mexico into their Gulf. It's not fair. We have a trade imbalance of water with Mexico. I'm saying that instead we divert the Mississippi into Utah.
But Mr. President,
We give it to
you
the
renamed
Mormons.
it to Gulf of America. That's ours now.
Well, you know what? They can have it back. We're gonna change it. It's gonna be It's not gonna be the Great Salt Lake anymore. It's gonna be the Great Salt Lake of America.
Oh, nice.
We're gonna make the Mormons great again, folks. We're gonna make the Mormons great again. In fact, we're gonna let them take multiple wives again. You know what? You know what I say? That Brigham Young, he was a smart man.
He brought him young.
I've had 3 wives. He had 3 wives at the same time. It was a superior system.
Incredible.
See, my daughter Ivanka, beautiful. I would date her if somebody else was.
Oh my God.
My daughter Ivanka, she married a Jewish man. Mormonism, also quite Jewish in some ways, if you know what I mean. You know what? I say we just do it.
Anyway, folks, on History Unhinged.
I couldn't think of a single thing to say after that.
Listen, I'm going to present it to the president, and I think you'll take me up on it. We're going to divert the Mississippi into Utah.
If you say he can put his name or face on it, he will say yes.
The Great Trump Lake.
Yeah, there it is. Yep. Passed. Oh, God.
It's going to be a big, beautiful lake, the biggest, most beautiful lake you've ever seen.
This is how
The water, they tell me it's going to be brackish.
The entire purpose of this was to start with human sacrifice, and now we've gotten to Trump flooding an entire section of America.
Oh, I love this show.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to Hastings Cutoff. It's down there. Terrible idea. We're going to get rid of Hastings Cutoff. Going to flood it with the Salt Lake.
I truly don't think he's ever heard the phrase Hastings cut off.
Probably not. I forget how niche some of my knowledge is.
Yeah,
Dude, when I went onto Red Thread to talk about the Donner Party, and I realized while talking to them that we have the single most comprehensive documentary on the Donner Party that exists.
Yep.
I was like, oh yeah, this has gotten weird. My life has gotten very strange. I am actually a leading expert on the Donner Party.
Yep.
That's terrifying. That should not be a thing. That should not be the case. They referred to me as such, and I was like, I'm not really an expert on this. And they were like, no, you are the expert. It's like, oh God. Is this how I'm perceived in
Publicly
Australia?
available immediate
Yeah.
information. Yeah, because otherwise you'd have to go extensively into a set library. If you're actually someone within contact that has presentable information, then that's something that would happen. Yeah.
I wish I'm going to try and get my hands on physical copies of their journals.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That in and of itself would, again, qualify you as
I know.
more of an expert having it.
No, but yeah, so my point in that was kind of like the parliamentary system, it can be, because you're so disconnected from your actual electorate, you don't really understand the issues that are facing them.
Well, does the parliamentary system and the appointment despite district
Not
living?
necessarily. Not necessarily. So yeah, I guess, if you break it down, if you were to have a parliamentary system where the
people
where the
actually
electorate was
representatives,
more like the way we do it here in the United States,
yeah.
I don't think it would be as big of a difference. I believe that's how Canada does it, right?
For what?
Your minister lives in your district in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so
pretty sure,
Canada
yeah.
is a lot more similar to the United States. But I think the problem you get there is
But they have a single figurehead, don't they? Because the prime minister.
no, the head of the head of state in Canada is the king. The head of government is the prime minister,
Hold up.
right?
Yeah, but
Hold on,
because
hold on,
Canada
hold on.
is still part of the Commonwealth, they still consider the king to be the king.
Yeah.
This is
In the
news
same
to
way,
me.
Australia, New Zealand, like all of it is part of it. Where technically speaking,
It's really hard to. That's the thing, is it's hard to compare, like, say, which is better between the United States and the British model, because the British model is so associated with monarchy. It's better to compare the United States to Germany, France, Italy, that don't have monarchies.
That's the thing, is like,
But I mean,
do they have separate heads of state and figureheads, though?
not really. I don't think
Because that's the thing.
the
is,
ones
like,
that have monarchs do.
well, there's a thing to consider here as well. The British monarch cannot dissolve the Canadian Parliament.
No.
Like they can't. Like it's completely separate thing. They could technically do it for the UK. They cannot do it for Australia.
You know
cannot
what?
do it for Canada. Cannot do it for New Zealand.
Here's
etc.
how I would
It's more
put
of a
it.
figurehead than anything else.
Yeah.
Here's how I would put it. The British Empire used to span a quarter of the world. Now its kids do. They no longer control any of it.
Yeah.
The United States is the most powerful country in human history. One of these two systems lost the biggest empire in history, and the other system rose out of the ashes.
But wasn't the main reason that the British Empire lost its control is because A, it overextended, and B, the level of technology capable of overseeing that territory that we have now?
Oh no,
is
World
vastly
War
superior?
One broke it. Is the thing is it couldn't maintain the empire. It sort of couldn't. It was forced to delegate more and more and more of its like governance and whatnot to the dominions at that point, and there was no ability to control the empire afterwards. Because the thing is, World War One largely broke the image of the unbeatable empire because it was so long, so horrific. So everything, there was so much blood that was shed by the dominions on behalf of the empire that the thought then arose afterwards of like, well, why are we a part of the empire that is supposed to protect us when it just wrapped us into a war that killed tens of millions?
Isn't one of the major things, though, about the difference between America and other empires that have existed prior is the level of the size of the populace by comparison to the area they control? Because, like, we have such a large landmass of our mainland by comparison to, like, Rome or Britain. They simply didn't have enough land to support a large enough population to maintain control over their imperial areas, whereas we, by comparison, have, like, dozens multipliers of, like, source population and land to support that population.
You can make that argument, but the major argument that would come about from that is that just like, okay, well, technology is so much better to the point that an area of land, like 1 acre of land now is able to feed significantly more people than an acre of land 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Like incredibly amount. Like I don't know what the fuck I just said there,
Incredibly amount.
yeah, that makes no sense.
not
An
redeem.
incredibly larger amount of people. It really does. Like the amount of calories that you are able to extract from the soil now in comparison to what you previously could, thanks to modern fertilizers, etc., is unprecedented. In fact, that's not even in the last 1,000 years. That's in the last 150 years because it is, or even 100 years, because it is thanks to the German scientist Aber, like the guy who, like Fritz Aber, the guy who is also responsible for chemical weapons in World War One largely. It was the Haber-Bosch discovery with, what was it? Ammonia? I'm now drawing a blank on specifically
like
what
pesticides
it is.
or
No, for development for fertilizer, artificial
oh.
fertilizer. Because before, what it is that people
Oh.
had, it was the Haber-Bosch process. Because what happened before is like they had fertilizer, but the fertilizer you got from more natural resources. You had to get from guano. You had to get from you'd have fish dung and all the different kinds of stuff, and you'd use that to make fertilizer. But you were able to get chemical fertilizers significantly cheaper, significantly higher quality through this process.
Yeah, it has to be ammonia because the primary element in modern fertilizers is ammonium nitrate.
Yes, yeah, and so that what it is. What it is. It was the Bosch process discovery. Yep, for producing ammonia from nitrogen and hydrogen, and it was Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch, and enables large-scale production of ammonia, primarily used in fertilizers, which significantly increased global food production. Yeah. Because that, if not for that, there was a prediction, and there, mind you, there have been multiple predictions over the course of history that it's like, oh yes, this is the cap of Earth, like the population cap. We can't have more than 1 billion people. Oh, we can't have more than 3 billion people. We can't have more than this. And thanks to that one process, it didn't increase it by like 2 or 3 times. We're talking 10 times the amount of food production in some cases that was completely unprecedented. Nothing of that scale had ever happened in all of human history.
I wonder when we're going to get to the point where we either need or desire to start doing vertical farming.
We're doing it now.
We already are.
In what manner?
Well, I mean, terraces have been a thing forever, but there are, like, there is technology being developed right now to do vertical farming.
Also,
I don't mean vertical farming in the sense of, like, stepped farming on hills.
No, I mean,
No,
like,
like
they're
you're building
working
it
on
up.
building
Like
skyscrapers that
okay.
have, yeah.
Good to know where we started.
Hydroponics is quite literally vertical farming because you have, oh yeah, hey, I'm going to build an artificial tower. It's only going to be running water with nutrients through it. And from that, you can grow as many heads of lettuce as you want out of it, pretty much.
Yep.
And
Sky's the limit.
And it's super easy at that point to harvest because there's no soil. You just pull it right off. There you go. We do already have vertical farming. It's just not on an industrial level, but you see that same thing being done in places that don't have soil. Like some of the greatest developments I have seen so far of hydroponics and others are actually in Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, etc., where it's almost entirely desert. You have hydroponics allowing for fresh produce.
See, that's the next dystopian novel, is a city, a metropolis in the middle of Kansas that is all the skyscrapers are not office buildings. They're hydroponic farms.
Interestingly enough, there are already skyscrapers that are partially that. Not hydroponics, but there are certain countries that have rules on for every visible foot of concrete, it also has a dedicated amount of green space. Mm-hmm. So if I recall correctly, was it Singapore, I think, or Hong Kong, one of like the smaller, basic, almost city-states, where if you go to it, I think it's Singapore, you just see, here is a small skyscraper, not exactly skyscraper, but it's like, here's a 15-story building, and half of it is covered in vegetation. Because it makes it green. It cools the area. It goes and it helps with oxygen. It beautifies the area. It does so many more things than just like, oh yeah, hey, look, we have a house plant. Literally a house plant.
I'm surprised we don't have more green roofs in the U.S. Because I
think it's starting, but for the most part, that's a matter of contractors than anything else.
Yeah, because like the benefits outweigh the detractors for sure.
Yeah, people were just so pretentious about it for a while there that I think it turned a lot of people off.
That's fair. All right, really quickly, I want while I hit the restroom to explain to him your thoughts on the single versus dual head of state element.
Me or him? Who's explaining?
You already talked about yours. I want him to talk about his.
Yeah, but mine ended up with me sounding racist. So I wasn't saying the Mexicans are the problem.
So because of my black wife.
Oh God.
All right.
Tell us about your black wife, your black Indian wife from the Caribbean.
So,
which sounds like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
In our household, we have a dual head of state. I am the president, and she is the prime minister. Okay. I technically am in charge.
So you're Putin, and she's Medvedev.
No, it's actually funny. If you want to draw anything for a relation, you know how there's that whole idea of like, oh yes, you have the man of the household, etc.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, yeah, I make a lot of decisions when it comes to things, but it's like she is the puppet master that ends up controlling a lot of things from the background that a lot of people don't realize. Pretty much anything that I do with social media only exists because of her. She actually is the puppet master. So if anything, right, I am the president that gets elected into power. However, the prime minister is the one behind the scenes that is actually controlling most of the functions of government and doing things.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird question, like, because there's not a ton of examples of systems where you've got a head of state and a head of government.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the UK is the big one. Russia, too. I guess
Where she actually
does have
is,
a culture.
Trinidad does.
Yeah,
Trinidad and
okay.
Tobago, like that's their system too.
I guess it could help from a cultural extent to, like, if your head of state is a monarch, then, and that person isn't actually in charge of government, then that's somebody you can see as a figurehead who keeps your culture united. And then if your and then your government itself can be more divided and contentious, but at least you have that through line.
Yeah.
Like, for America, it used to be like a set of ideals.
Yeah. It's
And
political
now-
and cultural continuity.
Yeah, but like the Brits have the king and we have liberty.
Freedom. America.
I think that's probably better because an ideal can last longer than a figurehead that's human.
Yeah, but then if not everybody has the same ideals.
Yeah.
It warps with time. That's one of the things that ends up happening.
I will say that one of the wild things about U.S. politics and ideals is that, like, liberty is in contention. Like, I know it has been since the start.
Because a lot of people
But-
prefer security.
No, I know. And then, like, you know, Benjamin Franklin's famous quote of, like, those who
Which
prefer
actually
liberty over
isn't-
security don't deserve either.
Which is from something entirely
Anyway,
different.
security over liberty, my bad.
Yeah. That quote has been adjusted a little bit. I'll go find the original one. Hang on.
See, I love how this whole thing in here is us just trying to look up and find different things that we're trying to verify the information of, so we don't look like complete asshats on the internet.
At least
This
we
is the
fact
thing. This
checked.
is the thing. You see historians and they're talking on professional documentaries and stuff, and they've had time to prepare. They have an idea of what they're going to say, and then they go find all the stuff they're going to actually say.
Oh yeah, we've gotten
You're watching it happen in real time.
There is no script. There's no preparation. Even in prior to this episode, we literally sat down and went, okay, hey, what are we talking about? I opened up my phone, looked at the list of what you all submitted in the first place, and went, hey, that looks interesting.
Yeah.
Let's do this. And we
considering-
only talked about it for the first, 2 minutes before diverging
Yep.
into parliamentary structures of politics.
This is
And also
episode
drowning
12.
the Vatican.
This is episode
They
12.
know,
We know
they
this by now. Like,
Yeah, that's exactly how it goes. Which, on that note, you want to bring it back full circle and talk about other methods of human sacrifice?
I do.
Okay. Do you have any ones that you particularly like?
How are you going to cut it from Dandies to that?
What do you mean?
Everything we just did was Patreon.
Pretty much, yeah. Well,
Aside from the Patreon segment started while he was looking for a particular dandy. How are we going to get from Dandies to we're experiencing technical difficulties with
Yep.
Aiden saying some things he probably shouldn't have said?
So-
to right here.
dandies.
I would sacrifice a dandy. There we go.
No. Dandies were what time period?
Like the 1700s.
Okay.
So very end of the 1700s, it was more commonly associated with the Victorian period because of large-scale industrialization, richer people in general, way more wealth, war, world travel, etc. Like prime dandy period is the 1840s and 1850s, 1860s.
And it was mostly English.
Primarily British. They had the French ones, which, if I recall correctly, were the Incroyables, like basically the Incredibles.
Okay.
That they just did. They were just super fancy dandymen.
There were still public executions in England in the 1800s. Were
Yes.
there not? Would dandies not have gone to witness said public executions?
Probably.
So, in terms of sacrifice, not entirely sacrifice, but I would say dandies witnessing what type of executions.
They would have if it was military. Here's the thing. You would have seen more stuff for like public executions would have still been a thing that would have been associated with the military, especially in colonial areas. If you had one that was a British officer, which very commonly, remember what they would do, they would buy their positions within the military, or at least within the army. You could not do that within the Navy, which I find that historically hilarious. I can't remember the exact year that they got rid of being able to buy your commission. I think it was just after the Napoleonic Wars, but I'm gonna have to verify that. The issue that they ran into was obviously Britain is an island.
Mm-hmm.
They need a strong navy to protect it. The army at that point is secondary. So the army, you could buy your position in and have like a big important job, even if you suck as a person. The Navy, this was not allowed. They did not screw around with the Navy. It was pretty much, all right, as long as the Navy protects us, we can let the Army around and do what it is that they want. That's meritocracy. That one you can get bribed.
Which I love because as a big fan of the Age of Sail, we love a good meritocracy within the Navy. But in terms of bringing it back to elements of sacrifice, so in a situation in which a military man would be executed, how would they do that dandy?
Wait, say that again?
How would the dandies that got executed from the military have been executed?
The dandies who got executed. All right. Okay. Firing squad. If it happened, it would be firing squad, but it also depends upon the level of severity. Like, as an example, I can't really imagine in my head for like an Indian dandy that would have done this here, but one of the most horrific forms of execution that they had in India, if you were a traitor or something, is that you were strapped to a cannon and then blown up.
That's wild.
Like, one of the things they actually would
to the front of the cannon?
Yeah, like to the front of the cannon. You would be tied to it.
Okay,
And
you know
then you would be shot.
Wow.
From the cannon.
I do need to correct myself about something like the Ben Franklin quote. It is exactly what we thought it was.
Yeah.
It's that the idea that it wasn't comes from this one idiot on NPR who this was like taught in one of my courses, so it stuck in my head. But no, it 100% was Franklin being like, stop trying to impose state authority. And this one NPR guy was like, actually, it's a pro-taxation argument because NPR is full of morons.
How in God's name could that be a pro-taxation argument?
It's a long story. I'll send you the article, but it's because I was reading through it again and I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make nearly as much sense as it did when my professor reframed it. But I'm realizing now that my professor was reframing the NPR guy's argument, not actually explaining Ben Franklin's argument, which was like, we've done everything within our state power as it stands to protect these people on the frontier of Pennsylvania. If we go any further, we'll be infringing on their liberty. And they don't want that.
Yeah. Those
who
prioritize security over liberty deserve neither.
Yeah, those who would purchase a little temporary security. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. Anyway, dandies.
Yeah, we're doing the dandies.
Yeah, I heard you say Indian dandies.
I don't know if there would any be any that would technically classify. We were just talking about forms of execution for what would happen.
Ha! Do not redeem.
I would actually. Anybody interested in Indian food later tonight?
Oh, I would be so down.
That would be nice. I would do that.
Cool.
I would slurp down some.
I would love to at some point. It doesn't have to be right now, but talk about the Indian caste system, because I would love to. We covered it in school, and I understand it vaguely. I don't understand how it was so pervasive. I can theorize by considering the fact that, like, yes, those in higher power were able to control the lower, like, elements of it very well.
It was feudalism on steroids.
It was feudalism on steroids, and the entire premise of I love this here because if you
take feudalism and slavery and have them have a demented, twisted baby.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and one of the criticisms I will see this online, and this is genuinely such a stupid argument. It pisses me off every time I see it. There are people who blame the British for the Indian caste system.
It predates the British.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Something predates. Now, where there's an argument, and I know there's going to be comment sections
really
that
predates the British.
Yes, but there will be comments that will try and go to a rant and be mad at me about this when I say it. Yes, the British did, in many cases, reinforce the caste system because it was utilized in order to be able to cement their rule and divide people. Yes, but you cannot blame the British for the caste system as it already existed. And in many cases, they ended up limiting many aspects of the caste system. They just kept it in place instead of getting rid of it entirely because it was actually beneficial for them being able to then stay in charge.
It also would have made managing India absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
If they got rid of it because of the chaos that would have erupted as a result.
So you know how the British controlled India in the first place?
I don't.
So it's a mixed system of direct rule and through princes. So about
Rajas.
Yes, the Rajas. So about half the country was directly controlled by Britain in some way, shape, or form.
Either through their government or through the trade company.
Yes. Whereas the other half was controlled by vassal states that would... they were basically independent, if you will, but their foreign policy, their trade policy, their taxation in many cases, all of this was approved by the British representative that was stationed to that specific place. So for all intents and purposes, they were puppets. That's the whole point. They were technically allowed to be in charge and control many different aspects of domestic policy, whatever they would do with their people, so be it. But almost all of their other policy of any real importance was controlled by Britain. And that was part of the British Raj overall with India. So these varying different rulers would control things still themselves, and they were part of, when we look at the caste system, they were not the highest tier. They were the second highest tier, because the highest tier within the Indian caste system is the Brahmins, which are the priesthood. And it is under them, you have the
warrior class after
which was that the Vaishyas or was that the Krishtas? I forget which exactly was which. But you have the warriors and kings, which was second. Below them, you have the merchants and artisans. Below them, you have the peasants, the farmers, and then below them, which are outside of the system and yet also at the same time completely underneath at the bottom, you have the untouchables. Which was hilarious that I will say this historically in here, is that untouchables would range from the filthiest, poorest of society that were absolutely untouchable to they could be stupidly wealthy, and yet no one was ever allowed to interact or do anything with them. It's like a horrible existence of, I want you to imagine a prime example, tanners. Because how do you tan hides?
I can't remember what
I assume you give
material
them
is used.
some sunscreen, you put them out in the beach, and
No, oil. If you really want it to tan. No, I can't remember what liquid they use, but it's essentially dunking.
tannins.
Yeah, it's like a acidic liquid, and the whole process smells
Urine
horrible.
involved?
Urine is typically involved, as well as feces and other things, like directly, not a component of, like, literally with feces and everything. So what would end up happening is that tanneries, historically, in many places across many of Europe and pretty much anywhere in society, they were usually not in the heart of the city. You would have tanneries that would be closer, not even with other industry. It would be with almost like the slums or in other areas where this is genuinely one of the most valuable materials as a base material that is used for everything that people would have. It can make you fabulously rich, but no one wants to be around you.
You stinky.
And that applies in Europe as well, that typically tanners, you didn't want to be near the tannery or around tanners because they were associated with this dirty thing. But in India, they took it way further, because not only were you dealing with the filth of society and you were unclean by virtue of that, even on a spiritual level, if you were dealing with, the tanned hides of cattle, and cows being sacred throughout the majority of India because of Hinduism, that was something that was a whole double spiritual level of filthy. So they were people that could be fabulously wealthy, and yet at the same time were forbidden from doing the majority of things with society or interacting with others. Which is a weird power imbalance.
Poor.
It sounds like
It's like homeless. You know how you're walking down the streets in the city and you see a homeless person and you feel bad, but you kind of just walk right past them.
Or in
my
cases.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
But I'm trying not to make other people feel bad about the situation.
I was gonna say,
not
'cause
everybody has the money to be like, hey, you want to go into the 7-Eleven and buy a meal for yourself? I'll handle it.
Yeah.
Like that's what I do. That's what you should do. But a lot of people don't feel like they're in a position to do that, and I don't want to shame those people. But homeless people are people too, and it's important we do what we can to take care of each other. I'm trying not to shame other people, though.
No, but
So
I
for
think it's important
correlation,
to highlight
imagine
what you
a
do.
guy in India who looks homeless but is also simultaneously decked to the nine in Gucci.
I will say that
That's
does
tanneries.
That's really funny.
that
that's
does sound like
tanneries.
the perfect opportunity for really introverted people.
In a way, yeah, but that's how it worked. So
Also, I realized I was
do you
mixing
think
up
on-
tanneries and paper mills in terms of the material in my head that was used, because paper mills also smell god awful, but it's a very different liquid that they use. I can't remember.
Do you think there are modern untouchables in Indian society
Yes.
who are let me finish. Who are of the wealthier variety, But because they're not allowed to interact with anybody in real life, do you think they have Discord kittens?
Probably.
See, here's the thing. When we classify something as untouchable now in comparison to because technically untouchables, by virtue of like the Indian government, they don't exist anymore.
Right.
Because the whole classification system has been gotten rid of.
Right, like the cheese caves.
Yeah. Societally wise.
What?
The cheese caves.
Oh, the cheese caves.
Yeah.
Like they don't exist, but they exist.
Right.
So societally wise, it still exists. However, pretty much anyone could open up a business doing something in comparison to what it was 200-300 years ago. So
Yeah, your professions were limited by your caste.
exactly. So you're people having a profession and actually creating their own tannery in India now, they're not going to be untouchables that are doing this. They're going to be people who are associated with merchants and others. I'll give you a prime example. The guy who I actually used to work for at my old lab job, his family has worked as agricultural brokers for centuries.
Wow.
Out of northern India, because the way the system that they have would work is that imagine a third-party distributor that basically what they would do is they would go around to all the farmers and they would buy up all the agricultural goods for a set price, and then they would turn around and then sell that agricultural goods to other companies on the market, etc. And that's what they would do. They would basically have their own kind of monopoly over it in their own, they're not feudal lords, but that's how they would operate. And this is a really big controversy in India because the farmers are largely getting screwed over, getting paid pennies on the dollar for what it is that they should get, while these third-party brokers are coming in and just ripping off the majority of the wealth to get that. Because, and the thing is, that was legally what had to be done. The farmers were not allowed to take the goods to the market themselves,
Oh, wow.
which is why it's been a big controversy. And I remember this because I remember my old boss was actually upset and ranting about legislation that was being passed in the area where he was from to stop that, to remove it. And that would have basically destroyed a lot of his family's wealth.
Wow.
It's got to be rough, like, as a person to be like, yes, I come from a family of leeches.
Like, he's an incredibly nice guy, but it's like some of the stuff that would come back from tradition for what he would describe as like, that doesn't sound fair or nice at all.
Yeah, because that's the thing is, like, with the feudal system in Europe, you don't have that. Every role serves a purpose, and every role has a reciprocal relationship. It's not enforced cultural norms. So the peasant in Europe, the freeholding peasant, they didn't have the ability to defend themselves. And in order to have somebody who did, that person needed to not be farming. That person needed to be training. So the peasant would work and would farm, and then when raiders came through, the knight would come down and use their soldiers to help fend off the raiders. And then the knight, of course, somebody needed to give that guy land and then control him, and that's what the lord was for. So the knights would serve the lords, and the lords would serve the knights by giving the knights land, and then the peasants would serve the knights by farming, and then the knights would serve the peasants by protecting them.
I mean, the classification of feudal systems would apply pretty much all over the world. It's just there's a difference of like, and they did have societal laws that did bind people, which is one of the reasons why over the course of the medieval period, there were not nearly as many freeholders
As there were serfs.
The majority of people were serfs. They were bound to the land. And this is something that didn't
But being
exist.
bound to the land did give you the benefit of having the protection of the local nobility.
Yes, but it was also way more of an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And it depends.
I don't mean to make it sound like it was like, everybody
did
was
sound
having
like
a
you
great
were-
time.
It did sound like you were lightening it quite
Yeah,
a
I
bit
wasn't
in
meaning to
comparison.
lighten it as much as I was, but my point was more like it wasn't that there was you didn't have a exterior cultural norm that was preventing the system from being efficient.
You didn't have a religious thing that bound you to something. It was a legal system that did it.
Yeah.
It was just illegal. Whereas in the other side, largely in India, it was both legal and religious at the same time that did this. That
If you
is
were
an
if
extra
you were
level of restriction.
Yeah, if you were a serf in medieval Britain and you were born a serf, but you say your father was really good at farming and you were eventually able to accumulate enough wealth, you could not buy your land, but you could buy your own land somewhere else and get off of your plot of serf land, and then you could be a freeholder.
Or you could
or you
technically
could send
pick up
your
a trade. Like, they
Yeah.
could be sent off, like, oh, I have 6 sons. I'm going to have 5 of those be this. The 6th son is going to go off and apprentice with a weaver or
Yeah.
with a blacksmith.
Yeah,
with
or if you
something.
were a particularly wealthy serf or freeholder, you could go to your local lord and be like, hey, I have this 7-year-old. I want him to be a page. Then page would become a squire, and a squire would become a knight.
Yeah. If they prove to actually be strong and or intelligent enough. Unlikely, but could still happen.
And you might become a squire and never become a knight. You might live your entire life as a squire.
Which was the majority. Very few ever did become knights. That was kind of the part of the point, is that they were, even if they stayed as a squire or an assistant, they still could serve at that point as a man-at-arms.
Yeah, they would usually be on the battlefield, either as an assistant or as a bodyguard.
I still think we need to make a sitcom called Squires.
Okay.
And it would basically be, imagine if you combined Game of Thrones and Monty Python and the Holy Grail. In the sense that,
Game of Grail.
because like,
Grail of Thrones.
we've talked about this previously, medieval battles were hilarious, considering their size and the style by what we consider like most modern combat to be. So reframing that in like a semi-comedic manner, where it's just like the squires are sitting along the sidelines watching their knights wail at each other and doing basically nothing to each other with like swords and things like that because their armor's so thick, whatever. Obviously, this is a little bit of an
Yeah,
exaggeration.
knights would be beating up on each other with maces.
Yeah. But like even still, like lightening it a little bit to the sense of like it's doing nothing and they're just tiring each other out. Like what was the one? There was something we covered like several episodes ago where it was basically like 12 versus 12 knights or something like that, like roughly that number. And they basically were just beating on each other until they got tired.
Are you thinking
most
of in
melees.
tournaments? Like a melee? Like
Yeah,
in
in
a tournament?
In a tournament. I'm feeling like it was like there was an actual battle one of you was talking about where like basically nothing happened.
There's a lot of silly stuff like the War of the Bucket.
It wasn't that. It was something because we were going off on a tangent about essentially a portion of history where knights really didn't do a lot.
I am drawing a
No
blank on
idea
this.
what
I
you're
am
talking
not
about.
sure what
Are
is
you-
being referred
maybe
to.
I'm
Sure, I
making
wasn't
something up.
talking about like how during the Viking Age, like early raids usually didn't have a lot of casualties. Because like you'd have a couple of people get stabbed, and then everybody would kind of be like, "Okay, all right, you know what? This is enough."
I mean, the
That
morale
happened a lot.
morale was a huge factor because typically what would end up happening is like, oh yeah, hey, it's a battle. Oh no, our side is starting to lose, and then they would run away.
Yeah, because when your entire army is like 3 ships of 20 guys each, you can't really lose that many of them.
Yeah, there was. I can't remember what it was. I think it was in episode 3 or 4 where we were talking about it. And it was like there would be battles where very few injuries actually happened.
Yeah, that's probably what we were talking
we
about.
were, and we were talking then at that point about the difference in what would happen with casualties because the moment that gunpowder gets introduced and like warfare goes to a further range as being more common, the number of casualties goes up from like 10% losses in a battle in medieval times
Catastrophic.
that was horrible losses. Like
Yeah.
that's bad. 25% losses by the time you introduce gunpowder is just standard of the day. Like that would be
Yeah.
fully expected.
But it's so like going back to the like knights and things like that, like low level casualties was expected.
In medieval warfare, yeah, for up until you get into like the 1500s.
Okay, yeah. So that I think that's where my mindset was kind of coming
Probably,
from.
yeah.
It was like, okay,
It's not what you see with like Game of Thrones, where there'll be just a battlefield littered with corpses and people going around like stabbing the wounded men and stuff like that.
The majority of time that did come after the battle, but it was largely people getting ridden down. The majority of actual fatalities and casualties in battle came after the battle was over, when one side would then run down the other as they were trying to retreat. So you were way more likely to die running away and retreating than you were on the actual battlefield, because at that point your back is to the enemy, they're coming down with cavalry trying to stab you as you're trying to run away.
And even then, the goal during medieval combat was not necessarily to kill the entire enemy army. It was to capture them because you could get money.
At least the valuable ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I'm seeing where some of my mindset was coming from, because some of those details, like the cavalry chasing the people running away, was not in our original discussion.
Also, if you were the invading force, you didn't want to kill the enemy's militia because they were going to be the ones tending the land you were trying to conquer.
Yeah.
So medieval combat gets this weird reputation in like film because it, especially with Game of Thrones, where, you know, the armies are full of these professional soldiers. Like, you did have man-at-arms, don't get me wrong, you did have those, but it wasn't the vast majority of the army. Yeah. Most of your army was made up of peasants, and that was why campaigning seasons existed. You didn't fight during the winter because it was cold as hell and it sucked, and you didn't fight during the harvesting season or the planting season because you needed to harvest and plant. So you basically just fought at, like...
It was 3 to 4 months out of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just fighting in the summer.
Which is why you'd actually be referring to as the campaign season.
Yeah. Literally 3 or 4 months that you were fighting, and then it was like, all right, we're putting it on hold. Everybody go home, tend your crops. We'll meet it back here in 180 days.
You're seeing where I'm getting the comedy idea from, right?
Yeah. I just looked this up.
They would also plan battles.
We were talking about ransoms, and I was just curious. I've never actually looked this up before, but I was wondering, what is the biggest, like, medieval ransom ever paid?
I would assume it's for Richard the Lionheart.
Correct. That's what it is.
Damn, I'm good.
Yep. Which obviously I knew about.
Was your field of study.
But I wasn't sure, like, whether or not there was one that was slightly bigger.
No. He bankrupted England a second time.
Correct. So we covered this before. He was ransomed for 150,000 marks.
Yep.
Right. And we're like, oh yeah, how much is a mark? What exactly is that worth here? All right.
What's the inflation from the 12th century to today?
This amount, because remember, we're talking at that point, it was in sterling silver.
Yeah.
This is a actual mark of weighted metal here. It is estimated to be the equivalent of $3.3 billion today.
It was the entire wealth of Britain.
Wow.
King John, I feel so bad, and I don't feel bad for a lot of British monarchs. I feel so bad for King John the First, because this poor man was raised as Richard's younger brother. He was never supposed to rule anything. Richard decides to go off on a crusade, mainly because Richard doesn't want to get married, and he doesn't want to be in England. Ends up getting married while on crusade. Not really the point. Getting married to a woman named Berengar. Terrible name for a wife. So gets married on crusade. But anyway, Richard just he wants to do something that's not in England, so he goes to the Holy Land. But in order to get to the Holy Land, he has to pay to raise an army and get there. And to do that, he bankrupts England. He doesn't bankrupt the French part. He doesn't, this is the Angevin Empire. Well, he just bankrupts England.
Because if I recall correctly, what he basically sold were futures on the wool market, because wool was the primary dominant export that they had. So he basically, if I recall correctly, he not only instituted church tax, because
it was a mix of taxing the hell out of people and trying to short the market, basically.
It was an additional tithe, an additional 10% tax that people had to pay in the first place. Plus, he sold all of the future proceeds from the wool market of just an upfront payment of like, hey, we're going to give you all the wool here in the future. So what you would pay at that time, you're just going to give to me now. Alone, pretty much, by doing that.
Yeah, so completely bankrupts England. Goes on crusade. Stunning amount of success on the crusade. Basically, Saladin won't even fight the guy. Because every time he does, he doesn't necessarily lose, but Saladin never wins. Who's calling me? Not the time.
Isn't another scam?
Probably. It's getting really annoying. So, anyway. Yeah. Lots of success. Ends up, getting there and being like, hey, Saladin, we could fight, and a whole bunch of people are going to die. And to be honest, we're pretty evenly matched as generals. How about we just agree that you guys get to keep Jerusalem, but we get a 10-year lease on it? And then we'll renegotiate this in 10 years. The church did not like that. And then he's like, okay, cool, I'm going to go home. But you know what? Really didn't enjoy the whole boats thing. I'm going to cross over land. He gets to Austria, and the thing is that Richard had done a silly little thing when he got to Acre.
Back at the Siege of Acre.
Yeah, and was it the Duke of Austria?
It was Duke Leopold of Austria.
Yeah, Duke Leopold of Austria had flown his flag up, and Richard got there, took Leopold's flag down, and raised his own, and was basically like, I don't care that you raised your flag first. I'm the one who took the city. Leopold had been besieging the city for months.
It was a bigger insult than that. It wasn't just like, oh, you don't deserve this because of, whatever, because I did this. It was more important that he allowed the French king to do this, but Duke Leopold was a duke.
Yeah.
He was not a king. So therefore, only the kings were allowed to raise their standard here. So a double-edged insult of, I don't give a shit that you had been doing this the whole time, I did it myself, but also, you are too low of status to do this.
Yeah. So then he goes up through Austria, and Leopold's like, all right, there's a tax for crossing my lands, and that tax is jail. And then he takes Richard hostage, and the thing is, he cannot stand up to the Pope, because the Pope is going to be like, look, I'm not happy about the deal you made with Saladin there, but you cannot imprison a king, especially a king who is a hero of the Crusade. So Leopold sent Richard along to the one person who could resist the Pope, the Holy Roman Emperor, because the Holy Roman Emperors just kind of had a habit of resisting the Pope at that point. You know, everybody's like, oh, the Reformation. No, Germany's been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
Germany, since they put a crown on Charlemagne's head, the Germans have not been happy with the Pope. So Richard then languishes in a Holy Roman Imperial prison for a while. Meanwhile, John, being the loyal brother he is, has now become the de facto king of England. And he's like, all right, guys, we got to save my brother. He's a hero. And the English are like, your brother hates us. And John's like, but I love him. So John bankrupts England a second time to raise the ransom to pay to get Richard back. Richard then comes back, goes, thanks, John, and then returns to France, never to set foot in England again.
Yep. Which, on that note from here, I did look at the amounts, but for specifically how much this was. 150,000 marks was the equivalent to anywhere between 2 to 3 years of annual revenue for the entirety of England.
Yeah,
So
the whole Robin Hood story comes out of this, too. The sheriff, King John in Robin Hood is... The reason Robin Hood has to steal from the rich to give to the poor is that the rich were taking money to give to John to pay the ransom.
That should be further explored in the Robin Hood lore.
Yeah.
It's not, because it doesn't make as good of a story.
No. Yeah, Robin Hood, much like King Arthur, has taken on a life of its own. I have a book at home. I wanted to cover this at some point. I just don't think it would do well on the channel, on Lore Lodge, of like the actual Robin Hood story, because I think it originates in the early 1300s.
Why do you think that wouldn't do well? That's like right up our alley.
Because every time I do a history thing, everybody's like, we love you so much, and YouTube's like, suck a shit and die. You know?
Yeah.
Like I did 2 videos on the Viking colonization in North America. The audience loved them. They did not do okay.
They did okay.
They are the worst performing out of the last 10.
I know, but on the whole for the channel, they did okay.
Sure. Anyway, point is, I'm not allowed to have fun.
Yeah, welcome to the life.
Also, we should probably wrap this episode up because we got to shoot more of them.
Yep. Yeah, we're closing in on an hour and a half.
Nice. Including the Patreon segment we accidentally filmed?
Yes.
Nice.
So that means probably we got like, what, 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, basically that?
We usually go for about an hour and a half. But I mean,
we are at an hour and a half. I didn't realize how we were there.
We're at 128.
Yeah. All right. Well, we accidentally did the Patreon segment this time, everybody. So that means it's going to be spicy.
All right, here.
I said some things that might get misinterpreted if we put this on YouTube.
Yeah. I'm going to have fun editing this one, too.
Yeah, because this one is all over the place. I can only imagine.
There's going to be
It's not
probably...
gonna be in order. It's not going to be in order. It's going to have different parts strung about and connected to different things.
I won't be
Before
shocked.
we begin the next one, I'm saying this right now, and look forward to this. I'm finding the story of that dandy that I covered here 2-3 years ago, and I'm going to tell it because it is genuinely one of the most unhinged, funny things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I'm fully expecting that there will be a section of the Patreon segment where it's just a continuous like bleep sound while I'm speaking. It's his job to make sure we don't get canceled.
Yep. Always has been, probably always will be.
Oh, boy. I gotta stop getting autistic when I talk about history.
Yes, getting. As though that implies not a natural state of being.
That's the benefit for me. My autism is just purely about vehicles. And movies. Oh, yeah. Yeah, stroke that sword on my face, yeah.
I am now officially an Irish king.
All right, with that, I think we go to Patreon.
Yeah.
Yeah.